So this is the Belmont Rapid Infuser. So we're usually using this anytime we're mass transfusing anyone. So traumas, GI bleeds, other critically ill people that need like mass fluid volume or blood product. Some of the components. So you have the actual transfuser itself, which lives on a stand. And I'll just point out that you can adjust it up and down on the stand. If you pull this lever up, it'll release it. If you push it back down, it'll clamp it into place. So if you ever need to tweak it to get the line lengths to be right, you can do it that way. Probably the more important things to note: it should always be plugged. It should always be plugged in if it's not being used to maintain the battery. So plug here. If you walk by it and you see that it's not plugged in, plug it in. It can run. It will run for at least 30 minutes on battery power if you are using it not plugged in, but just know that it won't heat while it's running off a battery, and it has a very limited battery life. So try to keep it plugged in whether it's running or not. Actual on switch is right here to turn it on, and then on the front where all the lines hook in, and then the last bit is just the display screen. So we'll walk through that setup next. So things that live with the Belmont in the bag that's hanging from the top, you should find ideally the tubing itself, which lives in this container, a couple of liters of saline to prime it with, and just know that the hospital policy is if we're running this with blood product, you should only be running blood product with saline. So that's why you should be finding saline in the bags. And then you also find a couple just locks and also some of the claves. If a patient comes in with an EMS line, most of the EMS lines, I know that Jared and Romeo have tried this with, work fine, but if you're having a big problem with it not running at an acceptable flow rate, it may just be because of the lock that they came in with. So you can try swapping it out either for one of ours, or most importantly, we've switched all the non-bonded locks now, so you'll notice the clave itself will come off and you can just run straight into the extension set here. This is usually one of the big limiting factors on how fast it'll actually push fluid. So here's everything that you need to set it up. So to set it up, you're going to start by turning it on. So you're going to turn on the main power switch here at the back. And the display will kick on. Basically, the display will walk you through everything you need to do to set it up. So it actually gives you the instructions, and if you follow the instructions and you follow the color coding on the front, everything just fits right together. Okay. So you're going to open the main door. Here's your disposable tubing. I just want to remind everyone that it's one use, so single patient use. This is not something that goes to CSR. It's disposed of in a biohazard bin after we're done with patient care. So, put the heating ring in first. So this is the heating coil to heat fluid on the way out. So the ring will go in first. You'll see the red tubing matches the red line. The recirculation tubing here matches the blue line, so you'll just run that through and then follow the tubing lines here. This piece right here, you'll see the arrow on top. Will match right up with the arrow here, so just go ahead and push that in. Your tube with the filter, and you'll see this has a filter unit inside of it. Previously with the level 1s we ran separate filter units, but this is part of the disposable tubing. So this will clip in right here. This will run up to your fluid that you'll prime it with. And when you have this all set up, all the tubing is where it should live. Go ahead and close the door. Okay, so the next thing again, it's going to just walk you through the steps here. So it's going to want you to connect to the lines to prime it. So we'll just go ahead and spike it. hang these off of whatever works. Clamping those is helpful. So next, so I've hooked up the fluid just like the diagram tells me to. I'm gonna just hit prime. It'll prime, it'll pull 100 milliliters through the circuit, which is what it takes to prime it, and as it does, it'll just count down. Okay, and then the next bit is you just need to prime the patient line itself, so I'll just show you here on the front. Everything here is primed, so these lines are primed, they have fluid only in them. The chamber here itself is primed. It's okay to see some air here in the top. This little vent on top is specifically an air vent, and so it's designed to vent air as it comes through. In practice, when you're actually using it, it'll automatically vent air every 500 milliliters, so you may see it pause and do that. And then this whole system is primed right here. This is what the 100 milliliters was, so all the tubing in here is primed. The only thing that's not primed is the patient tubing itself that will run to the patient. So, for this part, we'll make sure that the roller is open. We can take this cap off, and we'll prime the fluid through this bit. And to do so, if you come back up here, it says prime patient line. So if I hit prime patient line, it'll start to prime through at a slow speed. To make it go faster, I can actually hold it. And I'll do so until I'm satisfied that the patient line is primed, and when I am, I can let go and hit stop. And so now we're ready to go. So to actually hook this up to a patient, so let's say you've placed a line. Okay. So you would hook everything up just like normal, and like you can, just like normal. You would flush it through. The only difference here is that, let's say here's your IV coming out of a patient. When you go to hook this up, you could hook it up through the clave, but the clave itself may slow the flow rate depending on the clave. You can also choose to just take the clave off and then hook the patient line from the Belmont directly into the extension set that's coming from the patient, just like this. So now you have a nice quick pathway without the clave in the way to quickly deliver fluid through. So after you've primed everything, you hit infuse, it'll bring you to this menu. So this is the menu that you'll always see when this is running. So to basically just walk through the menu real quick, set rate is what you actually have it set to infuse at. Actual rate is what it's actually infusing at. So what you set it at and what it may actually be running at are dependent on your catheter size and placement typically. Volume is the total volume that it's infused since it's been running. Let's see, temperature. So this will run, it will push heated fluid, and it'll push up to 37.5 degrees Celsius. So this would be the temperature that it would be pushing fluid out at, and pressure is the line pressure. It'll max out at 300 millimeters of mercury. The other buttons here, so infuse rate, you can adjust up and down. If you just hit the 500 milliliters a minute, it will just set it to a quick 500 milliliters a minute. You also have the option to bolus, so if you wanted to give a specific bolus volume, you can do that as well. Right now it's set for 400 milliliters. The recirculate button just recirculates fluid within the tubing that we previously primed. It'll just help keep fluid or blood product warm in the tubing if for some reason you're not infusing but waiting to infuse. And stop will stop infusing. Okay, so if you want to actually start infusing, there's two different ways that you can do that. You can either click up on the infusion rate, and you'll see, for example, here I've set it for 50 milliliters a minute. It's actually pushing at 50 milliliters a minute, and you can just let it go like that. If you wanted to actually push fluid fast, like hundreds of milliliters a minute, this may not be the quickest way to do it. A quicker way to do it might be to just hit 500 milliliters a minute, and it'll push as fast as it can up to 500 milliliters a minute. And in this case, since we have a 14 hooked up to the end, it should be able to hit just about 500 or so. Alright, so in this case it looks like pushing through the 14 that we have hooked up right now, it's limited at 400 milliliters a minute, and you can actually see, and it'll blink it'll beep every couple of minutes and blink in the corner to tell you that the set rate and the actual rate have a difference here. And you know that this is pushing as fast as it possibly can. So right now I just have the end of the line open. It's not actually hooked up through a catheter, but I just wanted to show the max rate. So again, if I start the infusion, I'll just hit 500 milliliters a minute. Okay, so in this case, we've actually matched our set rate, and our actual rate has matched our set rate, so we could actually see if we can push faster. And you may be able to do this through maybe a central line, or maybe if you have a really fantastic 14, you might be able to do this. And you can see in this case, we're actually exceeding 500. The maximum rate for this is 750 milliliters a minute, and it actually won't let you go past it if we go right. Alright, and just some other things. You see the line pressure is right about at the maximum at 300 millimeters of mercury. And you see it's pushing right at the top of the temperature range here, right around 37.5 degrees. So just a couple other things to mention here. These do have a medication port on them. So if maybe for some reason this were the only line that you had and you didn't want to disconnect it, you do have the option to push through this port as well, and it just pulls off, and you'll see that it's a luer lock system. You can clamp off here if you're trying to push meds through it. Additionally, a nice thing is we're using the 3-prong system here, so if you're trying to, let's say we're MTPing someone and you're frequently changing bags with packed cells and plasma, and they're only a few hundred milliliters, so you go through them fairly quickly. A nice thing is that you do have the option, you can clamp 2 and run 1 at a time. When you've run this one all the way down, you can open your next one, clamp this one, and now you have the option to change out your previously depleted bag for a new one. Just the last thing to mention, with the level 1s, we'd been changing filters for every couple of rounds of MTP. This filter is designed to last up to 4 hours, or just the life of the disposables. So typically for us in the emergency department, that's going to be the entire patient care timeline before they go upstairs. So here's a really common alarm that is good to walk you guys through. So it says high pressure detected, check the patient line for blockage. So check the patient line. You know it has to be the patient line, so from here down to the patient. And you can see this is open, so it can't be that, although that would cause that alarm. If I keep going down, I see, in this case, the roller clamp is closed, so that's probably what's causing the alarm, and I can open it. You could also go further down and see maybe this is clamped, or maybe the line is infiltrated and it has a high pressure detection because of that. So now that we fixed the roller clamp in this case, we'll say next. And we're going back to infusing now that the problem is fixed.